Today I'm going to tell you the story of Fiona Donnison, who killed her 2 children and then confessed. This story takes place in the United Kingdom, coincidentally where I grew up, and in this video I will provide the details and a lot of my own personal opinion, so if you do end up liking this video, please subscribe. On January 27th, 2010, the UK was rocked when 45-year-old Fiona Donnison showed up in front of local authorities to confess that she had killed her 2 small children and was turning herself in. Police in Heathfield, Sussex thought that the woman was intoxicated when she arrived at their offices.
This is the police station which Mrs. Donnison entered yesterday to convey the awful news. Today, it was supposed to have hosted a police briefing to update on what inquiries have so far uncovered, but it was cancelled. For the 43-year-old mother hasn't even been questioned yet. She's still said to be in a highly distressed state and receiving treatment for self-inflicted wounds.
Suspicion was raised when they noticed the cuts on her wrists. Fiona Donnison smothered her 3-year-old son Harry and 2-year-old daughter Elise as a way to pay their father back for leaving her. The suffocation took place on January 26, 2010, and this is the central theme of today's video: rejection and jealousy, and how it can affect criminals. But I'll get back to that later. Let's continue with the story.
She and her brother Harry had recently started at this nursery in the village of Lightwater. Staff and other parents were clearly troubled by the news.
Harry was a fun-loving member of Lightwater Preschool. Obviously this news is devastating, and all our staff, committee and parents are shocked and extremely upset. We have Harry and Elise in our thoughts, and we send our heartfelt sympathy to all their family.
During the trial, in December 2010, it was revealed that Fiona may have killed another child years earlier, back in 2004. She used the kids as the ultimate weapon to take revenge on her former partner, Paul, for rejecting her and starting a new relationship with an old school friend. Again, indicating to the motive, revenge and jealousy. It emerged that police believed that she may have killed the couple's first child, Mia, who died aged 9 months. When detectives found the bodies of Harry and Elise in the trunk of Fiona's car, they re-examined the circumstances of Mia's death in 2004. So the police looked at what happened to Harry and Elise and compared it to Mia. Now, at the time in 2004, a post-mortem examination determined that Mia had died from cot death. It was said that Fiona smothered Mia because she was furious with her partner for attending his ex-wife's birthday party. Again, back to the jealousy. In a distressing 999 call, Fiona was heard screaming down the phone before calmly saying, "She's not moving at all. Her eyes are completely shut. Oh no, what have I done?" Now, a judge dismissed the charge because of a lack of evidence at the time, and during this trial, the jury trying Harry and Elise's murders were never told that she'd been charged regarding Mia. But whatever the truth of Mia's death, it had the effect of keeping Fiona and her ex-partner Paul together. See, at the time in 2004, Paul was sharing a house with his ex-wife Linda and 2 other children. But after Mia died, he moved in with Fiona in 2005 because he wanted to help her with such an extraordinary loss. But it may come as no surprise to you that Fiona did have a history of jealousy and rage-filled outbursts when it came to Paul. Fiona once approached Alison Shimmons, who was the school friend of Paul's, and said if he's sleeping with you, he will never see the kids again. During the trial of Harry and Elise, psychiatrists had examined Fiona after her arrest and diagnosed her as having a narcissistic personality and most importantly, an inflated sense of her own importance and entitlement. Lewis Crown Court was told that Paul Donnison, who was age 48 at the time, and Fiona had never married, but she had taken his name by deed poll. Maybe him not proposing or them not being married, maybe that had an effect on her. But again, more on that later. It was said that Fiona, on more than one occasion, approached Alison in her house in Surrey to warn her of him and told her, "Why don't you leave him alone?" In terms of Paul and Fiona's relationship, they'd actually separated in September 2009 when Fiona abruptly left the £450,000 family home in Heathfield, Sussex, and she took the children. At the time, Fiona had been made redundant from her job as a credit manager, which would make sense because in 08-09 you had the Lehman Brothers financial crash. And at that time, Fiona was convinced Paul was seeing someone else. Paul did attempt a reconciliation, but eventually told Fiona, having been with her for 8 years, that this relationship is over. Paul had reached a point that he felt her behavior was such that he could never give enough and the relationship was over. And it was that conversation where Paul had reached enough that was the terrible catalyst for what was to follow. Not only had Paul rejected her, but now he was free to pursue his relationship with Alison Shimmons. Alison and Paul had exchanged text messages at the time, but they maintained they were just friends. In mid-January 2010, Paul and Fiona's relationship became physical, as Fiona thought Paul's relationship with Alison was much more than friends. So what you're seeing is Paul can never really let go of Fiona because they're attached, even they have children together. So Fiona will always be in his life regardless, and as a result, she'll always be jealous of him. Now, the children's bodies were found in the trunk of Fiona's Nissan car on the morning of January 27, 2010. They were zipped into separate sports bags, with Elise dressed in a pink romper suit and Harry in red Rory the racing car pajamas. It was reported that they had most likely been suffocated with pillows as they slept on Fiona's rented house in Surrey the evening before. She had driven the 90 miles to the former family home to wait for her estranged partner. So essentially she killed the children and she waited for Paul to get there. She was armed with 2 kitchen knives, allegedly to kill him and blame him for the children's death. But he didn't return home as he was staying with Alison at the time. The next morning, Fiona walked into a police station saying, "I've killed my children." She had cuts to one wrist, she had swallowed a number of sleeping tablets and spoke in a monotone voice. Now, the court themselves were told that in the days before their death, Fiona had falsely accused Paul of assaulting her. She claimed that Paul had broken into her home, threw a brick through the window, and refused to leave when she called the police. It was clear to Fiona at this stage that her wish to maximize the disruption of Paul Donnison's life and his relationship with the children was not succeeding. In the trial, it was said that by any normal standards of human decency, it is almost impossible to conceive using children as the ultimate pawns by killing them to truly wreak revenge on their father for having rejected Fiona and taken up with someone else. Now, the police officer, Toby Young, choked back tears as he told the court how he had found the 2 toddlers wrapped in blankets in Fiona's car. They were beyond help. In the car, police found what appeared to be a handwritten suicide note, which Fiona addressed to the children. Part of the note said, "I am so sorry that I won't be there to see you grow up. I loved you all more than life itself." The police officer in court said, "The premature end of such young lives would have been a tragedy, but this was no accident. You killed them, you who were their mother." Fiona's defense was always that she was mad. Fiona went to great lengths to try to convince the police, her family, and the courts that she had lost her mind and had no memory of what she had done. But at the heart of this case was a cold-blooded killer who, once she had lost control over the man she loved, hell-bent on the ultimate revenge. Now, Paul himself made a statement in court, which I believe he's entitled to, and he actually called for the death penalty while criticizing the criminal justice system, saying he had fewer rights than the children's killer. Paul went on to say that taking a life is the most obscene act that anyone can commit, which in my view should receive an equal punishment. An eye for an eye. He went on to say that the pain and agony my family and I have suffered over the last year and a half over the murder of my beautiful children has been almost unbearable. The lives of these 2 beautiful, innocent and wonderful babies were taken from them in a most horrible and disgusting way. They did not stand a chance. The saddest thing today is that they will not grow older and enjoy their lives. Paul himself was questioned at length by the defense over his relationship with Alison Shimmers. Now, Paul, who was questioned at length by the defense counsel over his relationship with Alison Shimmers, said he often felt that he was the one on trial while Fiona was treated with kid gloves. In the court, Paul went on to say that the horror of having to live with the murder of Harry and Elise was compounded by the clear ability of their murderer, Fiona, despite admitting to the killings and being detained, to have more rights and considerations than I have. Essentially, he was saying, why does she have more rights than me right now when we know she did it? And it's interesting if you actually go back to the beginning. Paul was working as an insurance underwriter at a Lloyd's syndicate in London when he actually met Fiona. So they were both working in the similar industry. They were both married at the time with 2 children each. But what started as a platonic friendship moved to something more. Fiona herself, who left school at 18 and worked in Spain as a nanny for 5 years before landing her high-powered job as a credit manager, became pregnant in the first months of their relationship and gave birth to Mia in 2003. So, they were both working in the same industry, they were both married, they both had children, and in the first few months where they were friends and maybe a bit more, Fiona got pregnant. Now, Mia, the baby, that was born in 2003 and then unfortunately died in 2004, brought the couple together, as I mentioned earlier, but by all accounts, Fiona pulled the strings in the relationship. But as time went on, Paul had had enough of her jealousy and manipulative behavior and broke off the relationship. In terms of the family, Paul's brother Mark said that the family believed it was her original plan to either kill Paul and blame the children's death on him or frame him for the murders. Mark went on to say, Paul will never get over this. He is absolutely devastated. Those children were his life, and now he will never see them grow up. Everything has been taken away from him. With their cute smiles and loving nature, little Harry and Elise Donnison were every inch the brightest lights that their father described. Paul said that the tragedy that he could not comprehend, how their mother could have killed them, and told of how he had been looking forward to seeing them grow up. In a statement issued after their deaths, Paul said, Harry and Elise were the lights that shone the brightest in my life, and I am unable to begin to comprehend why this has happened to them.
Donnison and her brother Harry, who was 3, had been dead for less than a day when they were discovered in the boot of their mother's car. Police believe the children could have been killed at the former family home. They lived there until their mother fled with them after the recent marriage breakup. Police admitted they'd had previous contact with the family, thought to be complaints over rows between husband and wife. Suspect Fiona Donnison was still in hospital recovering from an apparent suicide bid, too unwell to be formally interviewed. 24 hours earlier, Mrs. Donnison had walked into the town's police station and apparently confessed. Officers who smashed open her vehicle found the bodies in the boot, wrapped in bin liners and hidden inside large holdalls. Initial post-mortem results showed they'd been asphyxiated. Builder Mike Garner had parked his car next to it.
It's quite horrific, really. Yeah. You wonder whether you could have done anything earlier on, but it's obviously far too late, I have to believe.
The children's father had reportedly told friends of his concerns over their welfare and well-being. Enda Brady, Sky News.
Under arrest, 2 children found dead. Glass lies on this normally quiet, leafy street in East Sussex. The results of officers forcing their way into a parked car, where they found the bodies of a boy and a girl, both believed to be under the age of 5. The 43-year-old mother, named by sources as Fiona Donnison, taken to a nearby hospital. It was her who raised the alarm, travelling a short distance from the car to Heathfield Police Station. Chief Superintendent Robin Smith.
She was clearly suffering from some distress as a result of what she said to us. Members of my team went to a nearby car, very close to the police station in fact, and inside that car, tragically, very sadly, they found 2 young children, we believe both under the age of 5.
A post-mortem is due to be carried out today. Last night, the children's mother taken to a hospital in Eastbourne to treat what police believe to have been self-inflicted wounds. It is also thought that she came from Surrey, a family connection police said in Heathfield. where a shocked community are coming to terms with the news.
The death of one child is a tragedy, deeply saddening for all involved, particularly the family. It's a huge tragedy. The death of two, it's deeply tragedy, a deep tragedy for everyone concerned, and also not only for the family, but our local community here. A huge impact on our local community, which is the reason why we've got so many officers out here currently. Heathfield, a very nice location. So an awful lot of effort's going in to try and reassure our local community, because, as I've mentioned previously, we're not looking for anyone else involved in this incident.
Okay, so now we come to my thoughts and conclusion. But before I continue, let's have a look at jealousy in more detail.
Low sense of self. They have no sense of self, essentially, but they have very fragile egos, and they're very jealous and insecure people. And so they mask all of that with this grandioso personality, or if they're a covert, they very much will play the victim. So all of these abusive things that they put out to the world is just a cover for really the fact that they're just wounded, damaged, hurting, insecure, jealous, envious, etc., etc.
Now, I've always said to my friends and people that I know that the best way to navigate through life is to ensure that any questions that get asked of you, make sure you have an answer. So for example, as a man, I will get asked questions. Are you taking care of your family? Are you taking care of your loved ones? Are you taking care of your friends? Are you good to your neighbors? Are you doing a good job at work? Etc, etc. I don't mean literal question, but I mean like in the metaphorical sense, right? Whenever questions are asked of you, as long as you have an answer, everything will be easy. Well, in the criminal world, these questions are asked in a courtroom. And I think what was key for Paul specifically is when he said that she, Fiona that is, has had an easy ride. And I 100% agreed. Let me elaborate that in more detail. In my previous videos, I said, in a criminal case, something's got to give. So Fiona murders the children, ends up in court. She has to answer to the judge. She has to answer to the defense. In fact, she doesn't even have to answer to the defense. The lawyer can do all that for her. Then she goes to jail and she's completely cut off from society. The judge and everyone else in the courtroom gets to go home, no problem. Then there's Paul. His kids are gone. He doesn't get closure, except he has to do it. He does not get to feel better up until he decides he can feel better. In my mind, when I look at that situation, the entire pain of this story is all put on him. And he did nothing wrong. So why is it that Fiona is the one that committed this heinous act, but Paul's pain is the one that we see? We don't see Fiona's pain. We don't know Fiona's pain. We don't know if Fiona is suffering. We don't know how Fiona is in jail. We don't know if she's happy. Because think about it, in jail, she's missing out on the outside world, material things she can't get. She had no friends anyway, so that doesn't make a difference. And obviously men, she's missing out on that. But she gets taken care of, her needs are met, she gets to eat, she gets to sleep. In fact, maybe in jail, she has more friends than she ever would in real life. No, she doesn't have the high-paying insurance job or financial job or whatever she had. But what use is her having that when she didn't look like she enjoyed life anyway? So, in retrospect, jail was probably the best thing for her. And for Paul, his kids are gone. He has to live there with the memory and deal with it himself. There's no court case for his well-being. There's no compensation for his well-being. So I wholeheartedly sympathize with the way Paul felt. And in regards to Fiona herself, she was just a very needy person. And my guess would be she was an only child, because the love and affection she received as a kid, she needed that going into her adult life. She became used to it. It became normal for her. And it seems to me Paul looked at her in a very casual way. I mean, they met. They were both married to someone else at the time when they met. And then they have I guess you could say an affair, but nothing official. And then, she ended up getting pregnant. It seemed like it was all just one big accident where two particles collided that did not intend to collide. I mean, half the time in what I narrated and the story, Paul is living with someone else, which, just imagine that, right? Just imagine one night randomly, Fiona's at home with the kids, Paul's with Alison, right? They're in bed, or I don't know what they're doing, but Paul is with Alison. Imagine what she's thinking in her head. Knowing what she's done, there obviously got to be like a lead up of thoughts and ideas in her head to get to this. And she's probably thinking, are they having fun? Does she love him? Does he love her? Are they kissing? Are they having dinner? Are they smiling? Will he come back to me? Is he thinking of me? Like, you understand what I'm saying, right? So you can imagine the psychological processes that she's going through over and over and over and over again. And maybe in a way, she thought, if I was to murder the children or do something so heinous, these thoughts in my head can be gone. Maybe she needed a break from the thoughts because she was too weak to do it herself. But of course, there's no justification for what she did, and the only conclusion I can come to is that she just couldn't handle rejection, and she was just an extreme case of handling rejection in a very, very bad way. So I do feel for Paul 100%. I mean, this was nearly over 10 years ago, so I do hope he's healed, if you can even heal from this, and may those children rest in peace, and may Fiona never, ever, ever see the light of day, because she was sentenced to life with a minimum of, I think, 35 years, I think. But like, she should not be eligible for parole. Someone like that should not be in society. Thank you very much. See you guys next time.